Hello, all you hardcore boxing fans out there. How you doing? It's Russ here from Porky's Corner, the biggest gob in sport. We say the things on here that nobody dares say. And today I'm joined by Anthony. How are you doing, Anthony? The chemist.
Hey, Mr. Porky, how are you? Can you hear me?
I'm all right. Just get me coffee. 2 seconds. Yeah, I can hear you, mate. Oh, yeah.
Good. Right. Look at that. Look at that hair, that buzz cut you got there, Mr. Porky.
Well, tell about that, mate. Uh, right. I want to talk about, first of all, I want to talk about antihistamines because you're a qualified chemist, aren't you? And I also want to
Oh
talk
dear,
about. We'll come to that.
why are we?
Oh, pardon.
That's correct.
I also want to talk about Bricktop's big thing that he went on about in
We're having a
February.
terrible line. You seem to be.
Tyson Fury's big announcement that's due this
Oh
week.
dear.
Well, where is
Can you
it?
hear
Because
me?
it's like 2 weeks late. Can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Yeah, we're having a nightmare of a line. I don't know what's going on. Oh no. Uh,
I can hear
Try
you,
again because we seem to get the same problem that you were having with
Ken.
the Northern Ireland guy. I don't know why. It's the internet because I've just got exactly the same setup as I had before.
Yeah. Can you hear
I
me?
don't know why the internet's playing up. It's a nightmare. Can
Well,
you
I
hear
can hear
me?
you.
Because
I can hear you,
you seem
mate.
to be lagging a lot.
Well, if you leave a pause in between, you can hear, can't you? You there, mate? Are you there, Ant?
Right. There you go. Hopefully it'll be better now. We just seem to have a really laggy connection. Can you hear me now, Porky?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate. I can hear you. Is that a bit better?
Yeah, seems
Is
it's
that a bit
perfect
better?
now. So let's start again then.
Like my bins.
I do. They're not as big as Big Malks, are they?
They're not as big as big mouths. All cleared up, kid. All cleared up. They're all right, aren't they?
They are.
Like a
They
fucking
are.
nonce in them.
Yeah. I tell you what, Porky, I'm pretty impressed with your consistency. One of the hardest things as humans we can be is consistent in anything. And when you said, right, I'm going out for the run and whatever, it just goes to show,
Every day, mate.
yeah, whatever people have done in the past, with the power of the mind, you could overcome it and you could invent a new you. So I'm impressed, mate. Really, really impressed.
32 lamps today as well. 25 meters at Oak Park.
Ah,
So,
fantastic.
that's not bad, is it? What's that, half a mile?
Good. Right, so let's start again. The last thing I heard before we sort of seemed to bug out was you wanted to talk about antihistamines. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to talk about Tyson Fury's announcement that didn't happen. Bricktop made a big song and dance about it 5 weeks. Yeah, we've got a big announcement to make next week. Well, it's
Did
Friday
that?
tomorrow. Where's this
Yeah,
announcement?
yeah, we did that on Seconds Out. I tell you what, then, why don't I talk about antihistamines, if you don't mind, first,
Go
and
on
what
then,
that
yeah.
actually does is it segues quite nicely into Bricktop and what he does. Okay. Right. So I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm a trained chemist. I did an applied chemistry degree at Nottingham University. So I chose a different career to my chemistry. But if I was in that career right now, I would be one of the scientists who would get the samples from athletes. Okay.
Yeah.
What would happen then in my lab or in the lab with other scientists? We would then divide that sample into a number of subsamples. It's all the same urine or blood, whatever it is. And we'd do various tests on it. And those various tests will then determine what is and what isn't present in that sample, right? Now, if you have what's called an adverse finding, what will then happen is, as you know, you'll have a B sample. So what we would then do is you'll then get the B sample and you would then redo those tests. But what you'd probably do is swap the scientists around. So if somebody did chromatography the first time, somebody else would do it, and. That's how it works. Right. So I am quite familiar with drugs and with various things because as a part of my degree, I actually worked for Big Pharma, as I told you, in 1988.
Mm.
So, antihistamines. As you well know, Bricktop came out and said, Daniel Dubois, we've given him antihistamines and everything else. He actually called them antihistamines, didn't he?
Yeah.
Right. In order to have the conversation, you first need to understand what histamine is. Because if I explain what that is, I then can explain what the drug is, which is called an antihistamine. Okay. So, histamine is a substance that your body produces in response to what it perceives as a threat. So if you're allergic to something or you're coming down with something, like a bee sting, for example, right? Or hay fever. When you have hay fever, you start coughing and sneezing and your sinuses swell up and everything else. They are the effects of the compound called histamine, right? It's like a bee sting. When you get a bee sting or a wasp sting, immediately on the site, the skin swells up and everything else. It's histamine that your body naturally produces that causes that reaction, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's something normal. Right. What are antihistamines? It's really simple. Antihistamines are drugs that are designed to lessen that response. And I'll explain to you why they're designed to lessen the response. Because all humans are different, right? We have a different histamine response. And you could describe histamines as, let me make it simple. Let's say you're in a nightclub and you have trouble. What happens to the trouble? The nightclub dispatches its bouncers, correct? And the bouncers are there to sort out what the trouble is, right? Histamines are exactly that for your body. Your body perceives it's under attack, therefore it sends its soldiers in to bat, right? Now, the problem is sometimes the response is over the top. So, for example, you could get some people that are stung by bee stings and it could almost kill them. They actually go into a state called anaphylaxis, which I'm not going to go into because it's too technical. So what happens is that when they have a bee sting, you would give them an antihistamine drug that lowers the body's response to the sting. All right, you get that?
Yeah.
Right, that makes all sense. Right. The problem I have with Bricktop's statement that, John Coffey had antihistamines and it made him drowsy is this. Antihistamines have been around since the 1930s.
Have they? Yeah.
Oh, yes, they have. They've been around. And because they've been around in the pharmaceutical companies for the 1930s, there's been a huge amount of research on them, and we know what they do. And I'll challenge anyone to go on the internet because it's not only knowledge that I learned as part of my degree and part of working at Big Pharma. Go on there and type in, for example, the history of antihistamines, and it will tell you that they have been around since the 1930s, right? Now, that also highlights another problem for Bricktop. Because they've been around since the 1930s, the first type of antihistamines actually did cause drowsiness. Part of working in a pharmaceutical company is when you have a drug on the market, you need to know what the side effects are so you could warn people. So you do all kinds of various tests, and it was found out that antihistamines do cause drowsiness. But because they've been around since the 1930s, okay, the first phase of antihistamines did cause drowsiness, right? I'll go into the drowsiness a little bit more, but it's almost been 100 years, isn't it? 70, 80 years ago. So what's happened is that pharmaceutical companies don't just sit on their hands. They develop second and third types of drugs. And those drugs give you less drowsiness by far. And I challenge anyone to look that up on the internet, right? So the point being that Dubois has been pulled out because he's had antihistamines and these antihistamines have made him drowsy is very thin if you know what you're talking about. I'll tell you why it's very thin. Number one, why would they give him an old antihistamine, which is more likely to cause drowsiness, when they could just give him a newer type version of the drug, which has got a hugely decreased drowsiness response, right? And let's have it right. Daniel Dubois and his team are all multimillionaires. They had been through several camps for several big fights, and they know exactly what they should feed him. They know exactly what his body does in all kinds of situations. And we saw Daniel Dubois the day before, Porky, looking razor. When I mean razor, I was looking at that thinking, mate, that heavyweight is moving beautifully. They've got him. He's like a Formula One car, isn't it? They've got him in the window where he's ready to rumble, right? Now, we are now led to believe that less than 24 hours later, something's happened and we've had to give him antihistamines. Well, generally, if you're getting a flu or something like that, which antihistamines are used for, Porky, right? There's a gradual onset, so he wouldn't be looking as sharp as he was in the training camp. Now, the other way is that if he's ingested something and he's got food poisoning, for example, if he's allergic to shellfish and he ate some shellfish, right, that might cause an allergic reaction, in which case you need to have an antihistamine to reduce that. But why would they do that when they know exactly what he ate before the Joshua fight? And in my opinion, high-level sporting events like this, where you're depending on your body, once they have a formula, which I call the matrix, they'll stick to it. They're never going to go down to a restaurant and order him lobster just in case he's allergic to it, would they? They just wouldn't do it. Would you agree, Paul?
Like their own chefs, won't they, all of heavyweight champ?
Correct. So the point I'm saying is that I find it highly unlikely that there has been some kind of allergic reaction all of a sudden in his body that needs him to take an antihistamine. And I also want to say that the first group of antihistamines did cause drowsiness, Porky, but I know for a fact that you said to me that sometimes you might want to take something to sleep. You wouldn't take an antihistamine because the drowsiness effect isn't enough to put you to sleep. Yeah. So if, for example, he was on an antihistamine medication, very simply, do you know what they would do? Give him a skipping rope and get him to do 3 rounds. That will take care of it. Or get him on the pads. That will take care of it. Now, there are drugs out there which do put you to sleep. And I'll tell you which one of them because I don't know if people have heard of it. It's called Ambien, right? Ambien's a sleep medication. And the reason I mention it is that a certain Tiger Woods was taking it, right? And remember when he had all that nonsense with his now ex-wife and she threw him out and then the police found him crashed in the car asleep.
He's back with you, isn't he?
Yeah. Is he? I didn't know that. Oh, he was on Ambien, and that will make you sleep standing up. That's very different to an antihistamine, all right? I've got one other reason as well where I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Ever since I remember when I last came on, I'd seen Joseph Parker with Dr. Usman, right? You remember that, Porky?
Somebody's text in today, I've only got one photo of him, it don't mean no. Well, why put the photo out?
Yeah, well, the problem is that it's Andy Lee. It's then got Tyson Fury, who's there. Come on, it's a little bit more.
All one little click.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than just one circumstantial evidence as a photograph, right?
If Tyson Fury says, jump on that rock there and dive into sea where them sharks are, Parker will go, okay, Tyson.
He would. Right, he would. And if anybody wants to look into what Joseph Parker's been up to, again, it's a very interesting deep dive you could do on the internet. Anyway, the point I was going to make, again, with these antihistamines is this. There's something called a TUE, a therapeutic use exemption, correct?
Yeah, a therapeutic exemption certificate it is, yeah.
Right. You could get that. Now, for example, let's assume, and we want to go with the narrative that was put out there by a Bricktop, Dubois had, let's say he consumed something that he was allergic to, which caused a slight anaphylaxis response. So they put him on an antihistamine, right? If they did that, they will get every single doctor in the world to sign that off for him to use it because, one, you'll be able to prove that he had an allergic reaction, and two, the antihistamine isn't giving him a competitive advantage. It's used to lower the response. And so that also makes it very unlikely what Bricktop is saying, in my opinion, to be true. Have I explained that so the layman can understand that,
So
Porky?
basically, what you're saying is they've took it, but they didn't know what they were doing. They've checked the list. They've asked him what's the matter with, what have you been taking? They've told him, and they've said that's a banned substance by VADA, which it is, isn't it? And do you think they've pulled him because they didn't want to knock Parker out, injure Parker, and then have a lawsuit? Is that what we're saying?
No, what I'm
Oh, so what are we
saying is,
saying then?
right, what I'm saying is, let's say they took the drug and let's say antihistamine or whatever else is in the antihistamine drug is on the banned list. Rather than cancel the fight, they can get a therapeutic use exemption for that substance.
Why haven't they got? Why didn't they get one then?
Which is that's my point, which is why I'm saying it's highly unlikely that that happened.
So why did they pull out then? Because they didn't want to risk it, or he took some, or he said, and why has he not come out and give us an explanation? Why is he leaving it to Don Charles, who's going to come out and defend his guy? And I mean, Don Charles are coming out doing similar things, which is all. I mean, how can you defend him with some antics he's got up to?
Well,
But he's going to defend his guy because he's getting paid from him. And the Don Charles is an arse licker.
right.
Basically, he's not going to bite the hand that feeds him. You know what I mean? If Daniel Dubois and Bricktop say, if Don goes, what's weather like outside? They say it's pissing it down and it's sunny. Don will get up, realise it's sunny, and he'll go, yeah, okay, I need to go get an umbrella. You know
I
what I
agree
mean?
with
That's
you.
what you're up against with him. So it is what it is, isn't it?
Porky, it's all very mysterious. But my view is, if they really, really wanted this fight, and my view, it's nothing to do with Daniel and pulling out and being scared. My view is that there are other interests at stake here that we don't know. And so what has happened is it's just been used as an excuse, which is what Bricktop normally does. The problem is, and I was speaking to Canada Bob. Oh, by the way, Porky, I just want to say thank you for putting me, Canada Bob, and Andy all together. We've got our own WhatsApp group now, and I had a good long conversation with Bob last night. And one of the things he said, and I'd say to everybody, go up to his channel, sign up. He's a very, very, very clear.
Canada's boxing channel and Andy's Cavern YouTube. Everybody, go now and subscribe
Absolutely.
because we must whip Mr. Tooth Decay.
The funny thing is, with what the conversation I had with Bob was this. He said, Anthony, could you imagine you and me in a press conference and Bricktop's coming out with antihistamines, and I, as a non-scientist, say, well, is there anybody who's going to say anything? Right. And then he said, what were the question you're going to ask? I'll tell you what question I would ask. If he said about antihistamines, I would put my hand up as a boxing journalist and say, okay, was there any kind of allergic reaction or anything that's happened in the last 12 hours which will cause you to administrate an antihistamine drug? Because that is for allergic reactions and to calm down the body's histamine response. What would Bricktop say? And what he would want is
Have
me
them removed.
removed.
Have you
Right.
removed?
And I'll be cast as a conspiracy theorist. And I want to reframe that, Porky, because I don't look at you as a conspiracy theorist. I'll tell you why I'm going to reframe it. I'm going to call it, you're a very good bullshit analyzer.
Oh.
Because let's have it right.
Well, I had 6 year plus working for Big Ron, didn't I? Fight Academy, so I've heard everything.
Yeah, well, let's have it right. Even a judge in a high profile court case says he doesn't believe the representations Frank Warren is giving. Correct?
You mean for the Calzaghe trial?
Yeah, Kawasaki trials and everything else. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So once you tell a lie, anything else you say is no good.
Well, exactly. And my point is that if he's making those kind of representations when there's millions of pounds on the line, if he has pulled out his fighter for some unknown, mysterious reason, is he going to give us technical details as to
No.
why he's done it?
They shut it
My
down.
view,
It's just like, for example, I'm sorry for butting in.
yeah,
If somebody bowls up now at the next press conference and says, Mr. Warren, could you explain why Tyson Fury's big announcement that you made a big hoo-ha about that we're
right.
coming out next week, meaning Monday, and it's now Thursday, has not happened? Where's this big announcement? There is one. They do it every fight week when there's somebody else on to keep him in the mix. He might never
Correct.
fight again, Fury. I've heard he's fat as a pig.
Probably because, again, let's go to what I said about you. Consistency is one of the hardest things you could do as a human being.
Of
And
course
I've
it
got to
is.
admit,
I don't think I
Porky,
took all that weight off and shape I'm in now. I have to get up every day and pound them streets. You say I send you a video every morning, don't I? And you
yeah,
know, sometimes I'm like, wow. But once I've finished it, it's like climbing a mountain. But I
yep,
really, sometimes I'm getting up and I'm like, Jesus, I would be a boxer. I used to think, I
correct.
always think about Robin Reed telling me, sorry for butting in, but Robin Reed used to tell me these stories when we were in Bulgaria. He says, oh, he says, Russ, I swear to God, I'd go to bed at night, 10 o'clock, and I couldn't sleep because I knew it was snowing. And I'd have Brian Hughes pulling up outside at 5:30. And he'd say, Deo. And I'd be like that at 5 o'clock. Here, Brian, how we going? And Brian would be like, is your leg broke? And he'd go, no. And he'd go, I'll see you at 5:30. And he'd take him up Saddleworth Moors, him and Michael Jennings and all that lot,
Right.
Anthony Farnell. And they'd make him do 10 mile. And he'd stop every mile and give him a quarter of an orange. And they'd count the quarters of an orange till they'd done the 10. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I'm like that in the morning. I'm like, but like I said, it's the devil and the angel in it. So I'm battling with it all the time. So, but I do it. And that's why I'm in good shape. And I've never been in good shape like this since I was 25. And it's
Yeah.
consistency. Dominic Ingle and Mickey Theo were right. Consistency is what does it. You can't just do it overnight. There's no shortcuts to looking well.
Yeah.
So I look it.
Here's again. I want to quote my idol, a certain marvelous Marvin Hagler that you can see on the profile. He says it's very difficult to get up at 5 in the morning and go running if you're sleeping in silk pajamas, and that, in my opinion, is what made him stand out as a true champion. And you see it, as you say. Let's go back to Fury. When you look at Fury's appearance in the ring, is that a real fighter that you could call a champion? In
Looks a
my opinion,
mess. Looks a mess.
no. And I just want to segue a little bit into Boli, right?
Let me
Because
just
let's
say
have
this
it
to you, right, before you go on about, you're on about champions, Anthony. You know, a champion,
yeah,
heavyweight champion. It's like being the president or the prime minister. Heavyweight
yeah,
champions, they don't go around abusing everybody and telling whoppers and bullshitting. All right,
correct.
they conduct themselves like oh, sake. Sorry for putting in, but yeah, go
Yeah, no, no, that's all
on.
right. So what I wanted to say to you is this. The key thing that you want in a heavyweight champion is consistency and the ability to get and put the work done. So, in my opinion, somebody like John Coffey, Daniel Dubois, because of the way his mental state is made up, he's a perfect candidate. He's like a Manchurian candidate. If you give him this script, he's going to do, if you program him to say you do A, B, C, then D, he will do that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very unlikely that, in my opinion, that he deviates from the script. When you look at somebody like Boli, who came in as fat as a pig, right? He's what was he again? 315 pound. That's what, 22 stone, you said, right?
22 stone plus he was.
Right. He claims to be a fighter that is chomping at the bit for the heavyweight championship. His last fight was in August, right?
Yeah.
Why on earth, when Billy Nelson's telling him in the corner that we haven't done any spars and whatever, what is he doing? He's a hype job, in my opinion. I'll tell you why he's a hype job. They all know that he doesn't have the mentality to cut it at the top, because if he did, he would never be 22 stone. But he's not even fighting. He's not even. What fight did he have? He hadn't had a fight. right? And if you're going to be in the mix, your body has something. Again, I'll use a bit of my chemistry background. Your body has a system called homeostasis. And what it means is it keeps everything the same. So what I'm saying to you, Porky, is the consistent runs you're doing, you're training your body to know this is what is expected. And if you stop doing those runs, your body's going to be saying to you, what's happening? Aren't we going for a run?
Yeah,
It
it
does
is,
it
yeah.
subconsciously. Now, any good trainer knows that. So my point is this. Billy Nelson, what on earth is he doing allowing Bacoli to get into that kind of shape? And not only that, calling him up and advising him for what we reported is 600 grand to get on all these planes and do all this stuff and everything else and turn up for a disgrace of a fight. He's cashing him out because, in my opinion, his team doesn't think he's going to get there. It doesn't make sense.
Well,
Right.
it's a
And I've
bit
also
like,
heard he's not on the IBF eliminator anymore.
yeah,
Did you know that?
yeah, it's not a final eliminate. I don't know if they're going to
No.
do.
So we'll still fight a Jagba, but it won't be for a final
No, they've
eliminator.
just took the sense out at mix, haven't they? But getting back to what you've just said there, that's very good what you said there. But that reminds me of what Mark Tibbs told me a story about Dylan White. What you've been doing, blah blah blah. Listen, just get on scales, Dylan. Same as Joe Gallagher. Oh, have you had a good break, Paul? To Paul Smith. Yeah, well, you're looking a bit, get it a bit heavy. Get on scales. That's it. And Joe Gallagher, but what are you doing here at this weight here? Because Joe Gallagher is ahead the ball for being on the ball, right?
Yeah.
Simple thing is, I don't want to read about strength and conditioning and this and that. Get on the fucking scales. There you
Correct.
go. It's a bit
Because
like
what
this week, Bricktop, this announcement and that. The Gad, who's a big Fury arse licker, he's not going to question Bricktop about Fury's announcement, is he? But the Gad were making a big thing about it. Oh, Tyson's got a big announcement Monday. Well, it's
yeah,
Thursday. Where's the big announcement, Gaddy?
I got a response to that, Porky. I'll tell you what I think it is. I once I was
Two
once I
seconds.
said to you I'll talk about the antihistamines. I started having a look at how Bricktop faces the press whenever you get an unexpected result. Okay. And my perception of Bricktop is that he's a very good, what I call immediate gaslighter. So there's always an excuse. Okay. And if you look at the Dubois fight against Usyk, it wasn't a low blow. Therefore, he could have won the fight, and we need a response. You look at the Shiraz, you look at the Hamza Shiraz fight, Porky. Bricktop was saying he wouldn't let his right hand go because he's broken his right hand. Now, if you go and research that on the internet, you could clearly see that there's nothing wrong with his right hand, but his left hand is showing swelling. So, in my opinion, if Bricktop was telling the truth, right, and he had an issue with his left hand, surely that will mean he'll throw more power punches instead of left, right? I want to go back even further, Porky, because I think a lot of our subscribers like the fact that we talk about sort of some of the old fights. Do you remember the Alex Arthur Michael Gomez fight?
Yeah,
I
I do,
think it
yeah.
was 2004, no, 2003, I think it was. What a barn burner that was. It was an unbelievable fight. And as you know, Alex Arthur was the golden child of a certain Bricktop, right? And it was just and it's right up there with the Gerald McClellan Ben fights, isn't it? In fact, at the time they were saying it's the best, one of the best fights since then, right? Now, what? Oh, you still there? Sorry, I thought I
Listen,
knocked.
I'll tell you a little story about Michael Gomez.
Go on then.
He went down a few years ago to get Bricktop at his office so they couldn't get back security, him and his son.
Right.
Over that. That's a funny
Right.
story. Go Google that.
Yes, so here's what I wanted to say about that fight. Gomez fought out of his skin. Very controversial character, very colourful character, but a very good technical boxer. And on that particular night, he fought out of his skin. And I don't know if this is up on YouTube because I remember it from back then. Bricktop was then interviewed afterwards. And what did Bricktop say? All of a sudden, there may have been some medical issue in Alex Arthur's camp, which Bricktop pretends to be mad about because he didn't know. Porky, have I want to be corrected here, but do you think we can find footage when any favourite Bricktop fighter has been beaten and Bricktop has said, fair cop, my guy got beaten, congratulations to the winner. Has that ever happened?
No, it's just that what happens is when his guy gets beat or it's a draw and the result should have been nowhere like that, he always says could have been either way. But if his guy gets beat and it's a money earner like Fury and it's a landslide, but they get it as a close one, he always screams blue murder. Like this Hamzat Shearer's one were a split decision and he weren't screaming about it. Why? He just went, could have gone either way. But when Fury lost comfortably and they get it as a close one, screaming blue murder because he's an earner. But I would have expected him to go berserk over the Shiraz one. He didn't because he knew that he got tonked. But yeah, he lost on us. Sorry, it was given as a split draw, wasn't it? Sorry. Yeah. It's a draw and it's own fighter and he's not screaming about a draw. He's going, well, I could have gone either way because he knew he got tonked, didn't he?
Shiraz was too scared to pull the trigger. And I'm not being funny. If you're throwing out and you're hitting a man in the head, your hands are going to swell up. That is part of boxing. I said at the time, straight after the fight, that Tommy Hearns fought for that exact belt with a broken hand. And the proof of the pudding is, and I don't know if it's still up on the internet, is that he went to the hospital afterwards. His hand is in a cask, and there's actually pictures of him, photographs of him at the Hagler post-fight party with his left hand his right hand in a cask, and he didn't tell anybody. Right? Here's what I think, Porky's going on, and this ties in really nicely with what we've heard about John Coffey and why he pulled out, the antihistamines, his response to the Alex Arthur fight, his response to the Tyson Fury fights. Bricktop puts out, in my opinion, what the Americans would call a phony bone of contention, or as us Brits will call it, an irrelevant distraction. He's very good at putting those out because everybody's sort of thinking, oh, yeah, antihistamines, it must be drugs and this and that and the other. We're all looking into that because most people are not scientists, right? Whereas the truth might be, as Peter De Freitas said on your podcast, and I actually responded as a message, which I hadn't thought of. He said, well, Usyk was there a few days earlier. They may have got his signature on a specific kind of contract to do another unification fight. Now, my opinion is that Bricktop will look at this as a business and he would say, would I get more money from Daniel Dubois fighting Usyk, or would I get more money from Joseph Parker fighting Usyk? If his decision is that Dubois is the better earner, he's going to pull him from the fight because it's a boxing first, it's a business first, right? It's a spectacle second. I'd say it's a control mechanism third, which I got from Bob. And then once all those have been taken care of, it's then a sport. And so my perception is, and as I said, I'm being like you, Porky. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a bullshit analyzer because let's have it right. We can't. I challenge anybody to come on Porky's Corner and argue the case that Bricktop doesn't bullshit us.
Oh, you know what? Bricktop doesn't bullshit us. What, like announcing fights between Bernard Hopkins and Nathan Cleverly, and Derek Chisora and Deontay Wilder? What happened to them fights? I can go on and on and on. He's got a rap sheet as long as your arm.
Correct.
But so nobody's going to pull him up about it.
Well, you are, Porky, which is why I say...
Well, take me on. They come and take me on. Not going to take me on, mate, because it's like he's suing Eubank, isn't it? So I said, well, that'd be the easiest win for Eubank in a high court for suing him for libelous comments. It'd be very easy. You just have to go and do your own work on internet. And then you go to court and you say, boom, 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 boom. But because he's picked up and he's already lost one case against him, he'll be scared to death, won't he?
Yeah. And the point is I want to go into something else in terms of I'm sure your subscribers are aware of it. The type of manipulations that go on in boxing, right? Let's talk about the old Eubank Senior and
Got like
Nigel Benn.
4 minutes left, but yeah, go on,
Yeah,
mate.
that's all right. Yeah, I'll finish this point and then we can
Well,
go on
yeah.
to number two if you want. Right, let's go back to Eubank Senior and Nigel Benn. They fought, and then they then did a rematch. Was it 2 years later? I can't remember exactly, Porky.
Eubank Senior and who? Eubank.
And Nigel Benn.
Yeah, they
When did
fought
they?
in 1990 November and they rematched October 93 at Old
Right.
Trafford.
Okay. Now, everybody knows, and Chris Eubank Sr. Himself says that Nigel Benn won the rematch, correct?
Clearly won.
Clearly. What was the result?
A draw because
Right.
there was a contract where
Oh,
Don King had
there you go. You've taken the words right out of my mouth. You
Don
speak.
King had the winner and the loser signed to him.
Correct.
And they gave it as a draw, and Barry Hearn went, no, it's a draw, Don, check the contract. But then again, if you want to know about Barry Hearn or Barry Epstein, go and type in Barry Hearn versus Steve Collins, High Court in Ireland, and you'll see that Barry Hearn lost £1 million to Steve Collins. And go and look at what were going on behind the scenes, what they were doing to Steve Collins. There you go. Go and have a read of that one.
Yeah. So what this shows, Porky, is this, right? You know, and I know that it's highly convenient for Barry Hearn to suddenly get a draw, right? Isn't it? It's
Yeah.
highly convenient. So are you telling me that a very meticulous accountant, knowing that he's going to lose both those fighters to Don King, has been really smart, and Don King and his advisors haven't picked it up, that if it's a draw, he loses both of them. And lo and behold, it's given as a draw. That tells you that the result of that fight was a business
They took a
decision.
point off Nigel Benn, didn't they, when they shouldn't have done?
Yeah, it was a business decision. And it's a business decision that benefits the interests, or what I call the special interests in the boxing. And you've got to factor that in when you listen to what people like Bricktop are telling us, when all of a sudden the joint highlight fight is suddenly pulled with 48 hours to go, because that's an extraordinary length to go to. It's extraordinary. I don't know if that is how many times has that happened in history? Do you remember, Porky?
Not many.
Right. And you're telling me it's because he's taken generic over-the-counter flu or flu medication and or allergic reaction medication, which they can get a therapeutic use exemption for. I am not buying it.
Nobody's buying
I'm
it,
not.
only the media, because they're scared to death to say a fucking word.
Well, as I said, Porky, listen, if someone's going to say to me, oh, you're a bullshit analyzer of everything, I said, well, I'm guilty as charged. I'll tell you why. At least I'm not living in Narnia,
What,
right?
like Spencer Oliver, Jug Ears, who comes out and says, oh, Martin McCauley's here, it means business. It's a better fight than Parker Dubois. Parker McCauley's the better fight. And then after the fight, 2 days later, he's like, what a terrible fight, terrible decision. That fight shouldn't have been made. How can anybody take these arse-licking human monitor lizards serious? We can't take them serious because they don't ask proper questions. Now, I know Simon Jordan watches all these, and he's sent snippets to him on his social media. Simon, let me just say this to you, you shithouse. I know you're trying to ask a little harder little questions, but you're not going for the jugular. You're shitting your pants.
Look, my view as well.
Yeah, we've got 25 seconds.
Yeah, we've got a few seconds. My view as well is that in that fight, not only did they pull Dubois out, in my opinion, for spurious, mysterious reasons, but Coley's advisors cashed him out. And the reason they cashed him out is they've looked at the type of fighter he is. You see him wearing all that clobber and everything else. And they said, is this guy really going to win the world championship? Their answer was no. So they've taken the money. right? Are we going to go to a second part, Porky? You want?
No, I can't. I've got Adametrics on now at 2:30.
Very good.
Let me.
Right.
I'll tell you what. Can you make it at 2:50?
Yeah, I'll be able to do that.
Right,
250.
I'll
What
see you
I'll
at
do.
2:50 then. Yeah.
Good man. Thank
See
you
you in a
very
bit.
much again
Cheers.
for your time.
Pop, bang.
Bye.
Well, peace out. Thanks for liking and subscribing, leaving a comment. Booyaka.